Jesus Christ did not speak English. You say, well, of course he didn't. We know that. What do we look like, a bunch of dummies? Of course he didn't speak English. Well, wait a minute. Do you know what that means? That means that Jesus Christ never said the word hell. Ah, true, because hell is an English word. It's derived from the Latin, but Jesus Christ didn't speak Latin either. The New Testament is recorded in Greek. What word did Jesus Christ use here? He never said hell. Remember, he didn't speak English. You'll agree with me there. So go to your concordance. If you're using Strong's, you go to page 478. If you're using Young's, you go to page 474 and 475. And you will find that the Greek word Jesus Christ used here was Gehenna. Gehenna. He did not say hell. He said Gehenna. What in the world is Gehenna? You're wanting to know what Gehenna is. I'll tell you exactly what it is. You get your Bible dictionary out, you can find out for yourself. Gehenna was a valley, and is. It still is. It is a valley on the south and west corner of Jerusalem. It formed part of the border between Judah and Benjamin. It's a ditch. You can go there today. Jesus was talking about a ditch outside of Jerusalem. You could even get a map out today of the Holy Land and take out that map and you look at the southwest corner of Jerusalem and you will find a valley there called the Valley of Gehenna. In the Hebrew, it was called the Valley of Ben Hinnom. That means that the sons of Hinnom owned it. Ben, that was the Hebrew word for son. And in the Greek, they called it Gehenna. It is a geographical location. Now, here's something really strange. Why did the King James translators take a word Gehenna and translate it hell? Now, every other place in the Scriptures where a geographical location was noted, such as Capernaum, what did they translate it? If they saw the word Capernaum in the Greek text, they translated it Capernaum. If they saw the city of Jerusalem, they translated it Jerusalem. If they saw the city of Bethany, they translated it Bethany. Now that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But look what happens here. All of a sudden they come across Gehenna, which is another place, and they translate it Gehenna? No, they translate it hell. It's unaccountable. They shouldn't do that. You just cannot trust the translators. You cannot trust the translators of any translation. Any translation. You have got to look at a concordance. It keeps them honest. A concordance keeps the translators honest. When you get your statement back from the bank, do you trust their figures? No, you check up on them because you're talking about your money there. Well, you should be more concerned about God's Word here than you are about your money. We've got to check up on the translators. And you look in your concordance and you will find that Jesus never said hell. He said Gehenna. And this is what it meant to his hearers. It meant a valley in Jerusalem. And I'm going to explain the significance of it in a minute. Sure, yeah, you can go to hell today. You can go to Gehenna. I talked to a guy that went there. Yeah, he said he walked through it. He said it's real nice there, especially in the spring. You know, the birds are chirping and the grass is green. Gehenna is not now functioning as it will in the future. And that's the key here. We're going to talk about the function of Gehenna. What did his hearers think when he said Gehenna? They knew exactly what he meant, and it has nothing to do with the torture of unbelieving mankind for eternity. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. You will see the lengths to which men will go to make sure that other men are going to suffer for not believing in Christ. Never mind that whether you believe or not is not up to you. It's up to God. God gives to each a measure of faith. Philippians 1:29 says that it has been graciously granted you to believe. Anyway, I'm telling you that the right word is Gehenna. Is there any version that recognizes this? There sure is. Have you ever heard of Young's literal translation? You go there and you read about Mark chapter 9. You read Matthew chapter 5. And in that version, he uses the word Gehenna. Yeah, he sure does. Rotherham, the Rotherham Emphasized Bible, same deal. He calls it Gehenna. You look into the concordant literal New Testament. They recognize the Greek word Gehenna. They don't say hell there. They bring it right over. They transliterate it. A transliteration means you bring the word as directly as possible from the source language, which in this case is Greek, into English. So they see Gehenna in the Greek, they just call it Gehenna. Isn't that brilliant? It makes a lot of sense. But Gehenna in early days, back in the Hebrew scriptures, Gehenna was a garbage dump. Gehenna was the place where they took all their trash, kind of like the modern-day landfill. You can go into any Bible dictionary. You don't have to take my word for any of this. You have a concordance, I hope. You have a Bible dictionary, I hope, and you will go to these and find out that what I'm saying is true. It was a rubbish heap. It was a rubbish heap. But in Jesus' day, it was a nice place to take a picnic, have a little family outing. But in the 1,000-year kingdom, that is a different story. It's going to be used in an entirely different function, and I am going to get to that. Matthew 5:20 says, except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the kingdom of the heaven. Jesus was preaching an entrance into the kingdom of the heavens. Where was that kingdom located? It was the kingdom of the heavens, but it was located on earth. Now this is the same context, Matthew 5, where he's teaching on the fires of Gehenna. He is teaching about an entrance into the kingdom of heaven. It's of heaven, it's heavenly in character, but it's located on the earth. Sure it is. Look at Matthew 5, verse 5. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. What was the Israel looking for? They were looking to come into an allotment in the earth. They were looking to rule and reign on the earth, to sit on 12 thrones with Christ. That's their goal. So this Gehenna has to do with a kingdom on the earth. It's a kingdom of the heavens, but it's located on the earth. Jesus is not preaching an eternal entrance into heaven. He is teaching an entrance into a kingdom on earth. And how long was that kingdom going to last? You know the answer. It's a kingdom of 1,000 years. And that's all that he's talking about here. The kingdom. The kingdom. And we know from the book of Revelation that it's 1,000 years long. That's the only time period we're considering here, not eternity, but the kingdom, the kingdom. And here's the question I wanted to ask before, where I couldn't find the verse. I just found it in Mark 9:31. For he taught his disciples and said to them, you go to Mark 9:31. This is the same context in Mark where he talks about Gehenna, down on there in verse 43. But in verse 31, he's teaching his disciples. And this is an important point to remember. Jesus came to Israel. This revelation concerning Gehenna that the King James Version calls hell, and the New American Standard Version calls it hell, and the NIV, the New Inconsistent Version, yeah, that's the New Inconsistent Version, it calls it hell. But a good version will call it what Jesus called it, Gehenna. And it concerns Israel. It concerns one nation, not all mankind. This was a distinct message. I want to go to Romans 15:8. Don't take my word for this. I'm going to give you a couple verses to show you who Jesus was talking to. Romans 15:8. I am saying that Christ has become the servant of the circumcision for the sake of the truth of God, to confirm the patriarchal promises. He's coming confirming promises that were not made to the entire earth. God chose one man, Abraham, and one nation, Israel, to tell his secrets of the kingdom of the heavens, which, again, I can't emphasize it enough, is on earth. I want to go to Matthew 15:24. This is another surprising verse, and it's going to change the way you look at Gehenna. Matthew 15:24 says this, Now he answering said, I was not commissioned except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The house of Israel. If you want more information on this, you go to Matthew 10. Verses 5 through 6. He told his disciples, then when he sent out his disciples to preach, he said, don't even travel on a road of the nations. Don't even go to the Samaritans. They were close relatives of the Israelites. No, he says, preach only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now let me ask you this. Here's a tough question you may never have asked yourself. If this Gehenna, this judgment of Gehenna, concerns the whole earth, if this is your one and only chance to go to heaven or burn for eternity, why is it that Jesus refuses to take the message to the heathen? He keeps it only to the 12. Now, there were people in those days who died. They died. There were people living in the nations who died not hearing this message. Jesus told them, I don't even want you to take this message to them. This is for Israel. I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Romans 15:8, Christ was a minister to the circumcision. So at this time, he's speaking with tunnel vision at this time to a particular people, and this is what Gehenna has to do with. An Israelite knew what he was talking about when he said Gehenna. Many people think Jesus came preaching horrible things that would happen to every man throughout every age, and he's going to burn in this terrible place called hell. Well, no, this was nothing new. And his disciples knew what he meant when he said Gehenna. I want you to go to Isaiah chapter 66, and I'm going to turn for you to verse 24. And it says, concerning the kingdom, that 1,000-year kingdom I was telling you about, it says, and they fare forth and see the corpses of the mortals, the transgressors against me. For their worm shall not die, and their fire shall not be quenched, and they become a repulsion to all flesh. That's Isaiah chapter 66. Do those worms ring a bell there? You remember where we read about those worms? Yeah, Matthew 5 and Mark chapter 9. Jesus is referring to a well-known prophecy from Isaiah 66. And if you read Isaiah 66, 18, we'll find out that this has to do with the kingdom. I will come to convene all the nations and the tongues, and they come and see my glory. And I place among them a sign. This is Isaiah 66:19 now. And I send from those delivered to the nations. This has to do with the nation Israel finally coming in to what God has designed for them, which is to be a blessing to all the nations. Where? On the earth. Now, what's going to happen to you? Now, I'm going to tell you something. They got some good government going on in this kingdom. You don't see that now, do you? No, criminals are running loose now. If you're a criminal today, you're better off than a victim of a crime. You know that. Justice is upside down today. It's not going to be that way when Jesus Christ rules from Jerusalem, because at that time, Gehenna, and that's what he's talking about in Isaiah 66, is going to be the place where criminals are tossed. Isaiah 66:23, I'm going to read it again. All flesh shall come to worship me in Jerusalem. Where was that valley of Gehenna? It was in the southwest corner of Jerusalem. And they fare forth and they see the corpses of the mortals, the transgressors against me. If you don't toe the mark in that 1,000-year kingdom, you're going to Gehenna. Yeah, it was a place where they threw the corpses of the mortals who disobeyed the law in the kingdom. Now, here's the strange thing. Orthodoxy, or the pastor down the road, he's consigning billions of people to this Gehenna that aren't even going to be alive to see it. That's right. What does Revelation 20, verse 5 say? Revelation 20, verse 5 says that the rest of the dead, those wicked of all the ages, do not live until the 1,000 years are finished. There are many, many billions of sinners who will not even see Gehenna because Gehenna belongs in Jerusalem, or the valley around Jerusalem during the 1,000 years, and this is its function. Why does Orthodoxy put billions of people there who are not even going to be there? Because you read that the rest of the dead do not live until the 1,000 years are finished. When do they live? Read on in Revelation. They stand at the great white throne. Where is heaven and earth at that time? Well, it says in Revelation 20 that heaven and earth have fled. Peter says in 2 Peter 3:10 through 13 that the elements are going to be decomposed by combustion. At that time, Gehenna will be no more. This only concerns transgressors in the kingdom, those who are alive at that time. There's going to be millions, billions who will not even be raised yet when this judgment of Gehenna is taking place. And I want you to look at a very important thing. Verse 23 from Isaiah 66, they will fare forth and see the corpses of the mortals, the transgressors against me. Corpses, bodies, C-O-R-P-S-E-S. These people are dead, D-E-A-D. And I challenge you, I'm going to ask you now, have you ever seen a corpse that was suffering? Have you ever seen a corpse that was screaming in anguish? Have you ever seen a corpse that was tortured? At least I've never seen one tortured with any significant effect on the corpse. You just don't get the reaction you're looking for because the person is dead. We're talking corpses here. Yet orthodoxy turns it into 1,000,000,001 screaming people. And how are you going to fit 1,000,000,000 screaming people in a valley outside of Jerusalem? I'm telling you, men have completely twisted this around. You see what I'm telling you now? It concerns one people, Israel, and that was the worst thing that could happen to an Israelite. That's why Jesus said, you are the people who are going to be leaders in this kingdom. What's the worst thing that can happen to an Israelite? To have part in the punishment that would be meted out to transgressors. That's why he said, it's better for you in that day to pluck out your eye than to enter into Gehenna. And a man of the nations wouldn't quake when Jesus said that. What if Jesus had said that to a man of the nations? You're going to go to Gehenna. If you don't watch out, you're going to suffer. You're going to go to Gehenna. What does he care about Gehenna? He never read Isaiah. This is not a message to the nations. But you tell an Israelite that, whoa, he knows all about it. He read all about it in Isaiah. He doesn't want to go there. This concerns him. It concerns Israel. How much time do I have left? What? I just got started. I got to talk about this fire and these worms. Is there fire in Gehenna? You bet there is. Jesus said there was. I believe him. I believe what he says, but I don't believe what he doesn't say. You know what I mean? There is fire, and it's very real. Are there worms? You bet your life there's worms. Gooey, slimy worms, just like Jesus said. Into the unextinguished fire, where their worm is not deceasing and the fire is not going out. It doesn't say never go out there. It just says that it's unextinguished at that time. What is the purpose of the worm and the fire? The fire is going to decompose the criminals. We got a bunch of criminals there. This is a practical thing. We got to make room for more. The fire burns them, just like the fires did in the old days. In the Hebrew days, the fires burned up the trash. It's going to do the same in the kingdom in 1,000 years. And whatever the fire doesn't get, the worm's going to get. And they're going to be there until they're needed. That's what it means by saying that the worms won't die. As long as they're needed, there's nothing that's going to kill those worms. And as long as that fire is required, if there's one body in Gehenna, that fire's not going out. We have a similar phraseology used in the Leviticus chapter 6, verse 12. Yet the fire on the altar shall be kept glowing on it, it shall not be quenched. Now, this was the altar in the tabernacle. But it was quenched, wasn't it, when they packed up and moved out? That altar later came to be in the temple. But we know very well that Solomon's temple was destroyed. God now dwells in his people. He doesn't require a temple. So that fire was indeed quenched. But what this is saying is that as long as there was a tabernacle, or as long as there was a temple, that fire would not be quenched. Likewise, as long as there is a body in Gehenna, that fire will not be quenched. As long as there is matter to be consumed, the worms will not die.